Julia, welcome to the show.
Hey, Justin, I'm so excited to be here with you.
Finally.
Sorry.
No, I love this. So you and I both spoke at Terry Weaver's The Thing. I don't even know when. And we were kind of connected. And I think we were in Disney World. And I said to you, I'd love to have you on my podcast. And you're like, yeah, sure. Now, keep in mind, this was probably a year and a half ago. Then I dropped the ball and didn't follow up in time. And then finally, I followed up and asked you to be on again. And then crickets. Right. But
And
we
you
talked
got
about
married. It was like a year later.
I'm now married. I have two kids now. They're not mine, but they're mine. And my life
Oh,
is so insanely different in that time frame. But I am
wow.
so excited to dive into so many different things with you. Obviously, look, we're going to get into AI. You're running a company now that is at the forefront, along with some of the big wigs in the AI category, and helping entrepreneurs utilize it in such a good way. But what really caught my interest when you spoke at Terry's event, and I got to know more about you, was your upbringing. I'm always intrigued by specifically people who've been able to build their own success, however you want to define that. But where they come from a place that isn't necessarily like the path was laid out for them, and you're the exact opposite of that. Like, let's be honest, like you grew up in a cult, and I want to start there. Talk a little bit about that experience. So for the first 19 years of your life, you were in a cult that was rather extreme. Talk a little bit about that scenario and how your parents found themselves there, and then kind of go from there.
Yes, yes. So I grew up in a generational cult. My great grandfather started it. And by cult, if you've ever watched The Handmaid's Tale, which is a book also written by Margaret Atwood, a very good show on Hulu, that story is built on the idea of fundamentalism, extreme fundamentalism. So, 5 to 6 different types of abuse happen inside that religion. That was what I grew up in. So when I say cult, this is not like, let's get around the campfire and sing some songs. No, like this was an abusive, crazy situation. So growing up in it, I didn't know anything different. And it wasn't until I was 19, 20, I escaped at the age of 21, that it started to dawn on me, maybe this isn't normal. Maybe this isn't the life that I can have. And it was really a realization that I'm still in awe that even broke through, because what happens when you're the child of the founder, which I was, he was the youngest son of the founder of this whole branch of this fundamentalist cult with hundreds of members. These people are still locked up in it. It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's just a divide that occurs, and there's a lot of protection given around these religious cults. So that's a whole other topic. One reason I wrote my memoir was to bring awareness to that, Woman Rising on Amazon. But going back to growing up in that, as a child, I had no idea that this was abuse. I thought this was normal. So it was not until I hit adulthood that I was like, well, wait a minute, maybe I can have a better life. Maybe I can have a life that doesn't include, day to day just living in constant fear. When is the next abuse going to happen? Am I going to, sometimes I wondered if I was going to live that day. Like,
Wow.
that's crazy to live through. And what I've seen coming out of it, when I left, and I left in the middle of the night, packed up, I had bought a car with the income I was making through my writing skills. So I had a completely online business that I was building right under, the cult leader, my father's nose. Thank the Lord.
Did he know that you were
That
doing
happened.
this?
He did. And the reason he allowed me to do it was they were taking 80% of my income for the church. Oh, Julie's
Wow.
making money. That's great. Good for us.
Yeah.
So that was, one of the forms of control and abuse. If you were making money and you joined my dad's church, he did this to church members as well. You had to devote, it was up to 80% of your time during the week to the church. And then, up to 80% of your income as well. So it's just crazy how much life this sucked out of you.
Mm. So there's a couple things to unpack there, right? So you talked about you said the 5 forms of abuse that happen.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that. And did you experience all of them? Do both genders experience all of them? Like, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So this form of fundamentalism was extremely oppressive, and it still exists, to the woman and the child in particular. So those two endured so much, and it was done in the name of making that person more holy. So like the actual forms of abuse, you know, there were several combined in one, where it was like basement beatings and you're stripped naked. Like this is part of it. Yeah.
What?
So when I say a cult, it's a wonder I'm here today with you, Justin. Like, you know, there are moments in my life I should have been killed. I should have died from some of this stuff, and I didn't. It's a testimony, I think, to what we can come out of, and we can really create something better than our own reality. Like we're gifted with that in each of one of us. So the fact that I was able to do that, a 19-year-old that knew nothing, is, you know, take that. Everyone who's listening, that's your encouragement to go do something with your life.
Yeah. So you talk about these basement beatings, like how extreme were they? Like I think so there's no physical harm in my childhood. There's no physical harm in our household now. Like, what does it look like? I mean, I know kids who got hit by belts by their parents. Like, what was this like?
Oh
Just to
yeah,
kind
there
of give an
was.
idea to people listening.
Yes. And, you know, that's an interesting question. I like where you're going with it, because when I escaped, you know, I called it something different, like a spanking. Well, it's very different. So there was a metal rod involved. You know, this wasn't like just a belt or a hand. And there was, you'd sit in darkness afterwards, locked up in a corner of the basement. That was part of the road to becoming more holy. You had to journal and think about what you did in that darkness. So it was a whole form of really control and complete brainwashing to make you think you were less than. And if you thought that, then they achieved their goal, which was you had absolutely no autonomy and you didn't know how to function as a normal human being. You were completely indebted to them and you were a puppet. So that form of abuse worked for many, many years, you know, 2 decades of my life where I didn't even know or even conceive of the fact that I could call CBS. Like that wasn't even a thought in my mind. I thought, well, I should be grateful for the roof over my head. I should be grateful for this beating. Like that's how we were trained to think, which is so twisted when I look
Yeah.
back on it now.
Yeah. It's like, what type of activities that would you do that would say this is now the punishment, the beating and the sitting in the darkness? Like, was it small things? Was it the big, at least in that world, was it the bigger things? Because I'll tell you what, kids get away with pretty much anything now. So tell me a little bit about it.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I tell my 8-year-old, you have it so good.
Like, I feel like your kids can act up just because out of sheer,
Yeah.
like, we understand that we have it so good.
Yes. And I see that, you know, in her acting up. Like, honestly, it's just her being a kid expressing
Yeah.
herself. So we were abused for that. And by we, I had an older sister that I helped her escape the same night I did, you know, packed her up as well. But it looked like leaving a sweater out at night, leaving a light on for an extra hour, you know, like biting your fingernails, and which I was doing out of fear. So I was
Yeah.
like, hard to break that habit because the person who was beating me for it was causing it. So it was a very complex, just constant inner loop that I had to live in.
Yeah. So I'm always intrigued by the human condition. And because I don't quite understand it, right? Like, me and my wife, we watch the serial killer documentaries and like all these things. We've watched documentaries about cults and how people are raised in different religions. And I'm always just curious of the mindset of the people running these
Mm.
things. Now, you have an inside look, and I don't know how much you're able or willing to share, but your father, who's running this organization, whatever you want to call it, cult, organization, religion, did he know, like, okay, if I do this, then they're controlled and I can have their finances forever? Or did he go, this is the way we live and this is truly what I believe? Does that make sense as a question?
Yes, that does. Yes. And I did get to, you know, see his mind and how it worked. And I truly believe, looking back, that he was 100% a victim to his own beliefs. Meaning, if we were getting up at 4 a.m. and we had to read volumes from the 1500s, which we were doing at 7 years old and beaten if we didn't stay awake, well, he was doing the same thing times 10. He was up at 3:30, even when he was sick. And, you know, I saw him at the age of 39 have severe health issues. And it was like all these things that he was putting on himself, I just saw were a trap, completely decaying his health. So, but he believed that in that state of constant, just being beat down by his own choices, he believed that that was the path to holiness. And he like firmly adhered to that. I never saw his pattern change. If anything, he just got more and more strict on his own self. So, these days, like I pity him. The abuse he put on us, he himself was put through as a child by his father. I'm the third generation. I'm finally breaking it. But in his life, he truly 100%, he had the wool over his eyes. He thought that was the path.
Yeah. It's just it's mind-boggling to me, because I can't possibly put my emotions into that state, right? Because obviously he was programmed since birth, you were programmed since birth, but then you saw this way out, right? Like you knew you weren't happy, even though you thought that was the only way of life. Like you knew you weren't happy. And I think sometimes that's the only catalyst people need to build the life that they want. So you started creating this business online. Let's talk about your exploration into that, how your eyes got open to it, and especially living in the structure that you did, and then beginning to kind of venture in. And what was that like for you?
Yes. So, it's interesting because I grew up with a sister who was the complete opposite of me. And so I would always used to wonder, why are we wired so differently? I was an entrepreneur, like from the age of 10. I was out there printing my own flyers, didn't even get permission, got in trouble for it. Was trying to sell services. Like one of these services I came up with at 16 was a computer repair company. Just that.
I love
So
it.
by the age of 19, when I found myself just really second guessing my whole existence, that's really what happened. Like, was I even meant to be here on earth? Because when you go through that every day, I think it's just a matter of time till you fall into that. And what happens is, two things. You usually either become a victim, and like suicide can happen from that. I know I was close to it. Or you find a way to pick yourself back up and keep going. And so that's what I did. And one morning at 19, it came to me, why don't you just figure out how to make an income doing what you love? And so what I loved was very clear. From the age of 3 and 4, I'd been writing. I wrote a 200-page book at age 12.
Oh my
Lost it on
gosh.
a
I'm
floppy
38
disk.
and I'm having a problem writing a book. That's insane.
I think you have to be a writer to be that crazy.
Yeah.
So that was very clear. Like that was my early passion. So I was like, okay, it's writing. So I get online and I Google, how do I make money writing? And back then, that was 2011, I found Upwork, but back then it was Odesk. And at the time, Odesk had, I think it was 11,000 gigs. I remember scrolling down, looking at the number of results for writing jobs, and it was 11,000. And I was like, whoa, okay, there's a market. So the next morning, I get up before my dad. I'm up at, before 4 a.m. to do this stuff. And I'm getting online, building my profile. And I just like start getting so much excitement when I realize I can do this with effort. That's all it will take is effort. And so, growing up, one thing we were conditioned on was effort. That was something that was ingrained into us. And I'm not saying that it was good because of the way it was done with a lot of abuse, but and this is why, like, I really encourage my 8-year-old to work hard. We give her chores, we give her a schedule of what to do. And then we, of course, give her some time for creativity. But, if you don't encourage kids to work hard from a young age, they lose that. And so I had this sense of, well, if all it takes is effort, then that's all I need to put in. Well, I'm going to do it. Sure. Move out of my way. So I started building a freelance profile. And I just put it out there that I was going to write in exchange for some reviews. So within 24 hours, I had my first 3 gigs, wrote all of them that day, got them done. I was early on all of them and sent them off to the client. A couple of them came back for revisions because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was learning as I did it.
Yeah.
But all of them came through and I got almost 5 stars. And so that was like, okay, that was my catalyst for I can do this. Like that simple. And then it just grew, snowballed so quickly. Within 3 months, I had so much work from Upwork, back then Odesk, that I decided, okay, I can turn it away or I can start a business. So guess what I did? Started a business. Didn't know what I was doing at all. Googled this thing.
Now, did you have that conversation with your family? Like, hey, I want to start this business before you did, or did you do it and then waited for repercussions?
I did it and waited for repercussions.
Yeah. So what did that look like? And the reason I want you to share this is because there's entrepreneurs that are, or people who are entrepreneurs at the core, who are afraid to make the jump because of potential failure, because of potential some whatever, right? Oh, what if I quit my job? Well, you can just go get another one. Like the thing that you had to overcome was so much greater, and I want people to hear that.
Yes. Yes. Well, what I had to think about was they could take away my computer. I could get locked up in my room. I could lose, like, they were starting to take food away at that age. I was locked up in my room, wasn't allowed to come down. I'm like, so how am I expected to eat? And then I'm thinking to myself, I guess that's part of the punishment. So pretty, a lot worse than, oh, we can just go on to the next opportunity here. It
Yeah.
was, really like life or death. And so what happened was I was also in college for a nursing degree, which my parents were really pushing. Like they saw that as something I was meant to do. They did see my talent. I had some skill and talent early on, learned things very quickly. And so they kind of pushed me in that direction. But I would be a terrible nurse. I don't think well on my feet. I'm a planner, I'm a behind the scenes creative. So that was pretty clear from the get go. I better get off the clinical floor. So whenever I was getting halfway through that, that's when I had the idea at 19 to start make money writing. And what happened was I had to choose between finishing writing gigs, getting paid, or studying for that lecture test. And I still look back and I'm shocked at the courage I had to just let that lecture test die in the dust and then get the repercussions. And so what happened was when they learned I was failing college, oh my gosh, I started getting shunned. And I will say that was one of the worst punishments. There's nothing like walking by your own parent in the same house you live in and having that person it completely ignore you, won't respond to you, won't look at you, won't smile,
Oh my
will
goodness.
not even respond if you say their name. Like it was almost worse than them dying. Like there they were, and I couldn't even talk to them. So that was what happened when I chose that route.
Yeah. Now, when you got shunned, did you also get shunned by the whole religion? Like every single person within your community would do the same thing?
So what's funny, Justin, by then, my dad had excommunicated everyone else.
What?
So it was just us. No one was holy enough to live up to his standards.
Wow. That's so crazy to me. So he was just like, nope, not, you're not good enough. You're out.
Yes, literally. He excommunicated them, and it was a whole thing. Like they had originally signed a 30-page covenant that he wrote that, had them like giving their life away to the church, wearing certain colors. And so when he saw them like little mistakes, like, oh, you had purple in the bow of your shoe today. Okay, we're gonna write that down. That's sin number one. And when you hit a list, then you get excommunicated. Like there's no forgiveness. And so
Wow.
when they were excommunicated, he would read their name from the pulpit and have them come up and like take this paper of excommunication away and then lock the door on them as they walked out. It was like watching a tragedy. It was horrific.
Yeah. Yeah. That is just, I mean, I like, it's almost like I'm speechless. And as a podcast interviewer and a speaker, I'm very rarely speechless. Like, it's so, again, it's so hard to wrap your mind around. And here you are, your whole entire life. You've watched these people get excommunicated, kicked out of the church, all these things for the smallest things. And here you are taking this massive leap. But like you said, you had thoughts of suicide. So I imagine at that point, you were like, well, what else is there? Like, if I can't do what I
Yes.
love, then what's the point? Was that kind of the push to go, I'm doing this anyway?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. At 19, I really went through a whole complex slew of emotions and just personal uh, stuff. And it was really brought on by the abuse. So, there was a time I remember I was getting plagued by these nightmares of like watching myself die with blood. And I know like that was an attack where there was an open door to me potentially seeing myself as completely invaluable. And then there was like the next morning after I had that dream, I remember my mom, who at that point was told by my dad to not talk to me, not smile at me, not laugh. I missed all that. I missed her laughter.
Hmm.
But that morning, something happened. She looked at me and she like got close to me. She was like, "Are you okay? I'm worried about you." And she like grabbed my shoulders and shook me a little bit. She's like, She's like, you need to just focus on yourself. Like, don't worry about whatever's worrying you. And I was like, what? You're not,
Whoa.
first of all, you're not allowed to say that to me. Second of all, do you know what I'm thinking? And that was like all I needed to just shake me out of that. And I never went back to that dark place. Never. Because the next thing I did was just like you said, well, if I have nothing here, what the heck do I have to lose? Let me
Mm.
just really tick them off.
Yeah, that's
All in on
huge.
my dream.
Yeah, and you know, and the awareness of that, and for your mom, I think here's the thing: you grew up and your mother was in a place where you felt like you had no other choice. But at the end of the day, a mother's love, I think, bypasses every single thing on the planet, right? And I can only speak to
Yeah.
that to see my wife, how she treats her children, and how my mom treated me. And I think it goes well beyond, right? And your mom in that moment knew she had a choice, and she had to say something, even if it meant something bad for her, which I think is a beautiful moment, right? That aha
Yeah.
moment of like, Julia's got something special inside of her. I need to I need to shake it out of her, right? Like,
Mm,
and
yeah.
that's exactly what she did. So here you go, you start this business, your parents find out, they start to take 80% of your income. What was that defeating in itself? Like, what was that like?
It was. It really was. And I think that was one of the factors to me packing up the car and leaving in the middle of the night. I realized if I'm going to have any success in life, it's not going to be here. They were
Hmm.
throttling my business. And not only were they taking the profits, but uh, my dad had also not given me a choice. I had to hire my mom. And my mom, poor thing, didn't know this world of online content at all. When I would send in her work to my clients, oh my gosh. I heard that she was non-native from India. I'm like, no, she's just a bad writer. So I promise you, she lives in the same house as I do. And I lost a client, one of my biggest clients those first 3 months.
Hmm.
So I knew if I'm gonna stay here, my business is not gonna succeed. And being somebody who's just born as a very driven person, that alone was enough to be one of the factors that got me out.
Yeah. And then let's talk about the evening you left, the emotion behind it, the fear, the anxiety, everything I imagine that came with it, probably excitement as well, right? But at the same time, then after that, let's shift into the entrepreneurial side of things. But let's discuss that evening when you're like, okay, I'm out.
Yes. Yeah. I look back on the evening with so much pride. It's the one moment in my life where I really did something that gave me what I have today. I wouldn't be here if I didn't choose to step out in faith despite all that fear. And the fear was very real. Like, I had to hide the car a block away. If they found the car, they could have padlocked the tires. I couldn't have gotten out. So many things were in my mind. What if they wake up tonight and hear us leaving? Like, there will be drastic measures. They were truly capable of anything. So there was a lot of fear and a lot of adrenaline around the actual moment. Like, are we going to be able to get out of this house? So when we did, and it was successful, and I was leaving that house out the door at midnight with my sister, packed her up, got her out with me. I'm locking the door behind me, looking up at the sky, and it just felt like such an exhilarating moment where finally I have the chance to build something that will be my own life, not on someone else's terms, not under somebody else's environment. And I'll tell you though, when I left, I truly believed I would never be normal. I thought, okay, I'll just be some broken human. I'll never be able to, speak on stage. I'll never, ever be able to do that. I'll never be able to, grow my business to 7 figures. Maybe, but I don't see it happening. And so I was really ready to settle when I left for just at least happiness. But what I've been amazed to find out is how capable we are of healing. Like, I think beyond even our dreams, we are capable of it and doing a complete 180 from how we were raised. And that is truly beautiful.
Yeah, what process did you do to begin to heal? Was there therapists involved? Was it just you moving forward and creating your own life? What did that look like?
So right away at the beginning, no therapy. I have to say it was strange the route I took, but I guess it worked for me. The first the first 6 years of my life, actually, outside the cult, I didn't choose to talk to anyone really about it other than my husband. So I had met somebody online and that person turned out to be my husband, married him 3 months after escaping. It was just meant to be, it
Oh
was
my gosh.
It was I know, met him on Upwork, back then Odesk.
That is not a dating site, ladies and gentlemen.
No,
Do not go to Upwork looking for the love of your life. This is a rare moment.
I haven't met anyone else yet that can say the same.
That's great. No, and here you go. Like now, 3 months out, you're married, you're building this business, unsure of where it's going to lead, but you have the tenacity, you have the work ethic, you have all those things, which from a positive standpoint, you learned in the way you grew up, right? Like to
Yes.
understand, like head down, do the work, keep plugging away, like all that stuff. How quickly did your business grow? And what did that look like as you began to scale? Because I know you ended up having employees and doing, all these things.
Yes. So the first 2 years, I call it, my writing agency was called Express Writers. The first year I called it Express Writer because it was me learning how to do everything, writing most of the content. And then the second year, so the first year I was still in the cult, left that fall. And it's so crazy how you can see this in the history of the business. Like you can see when I left the cult and a direct income correlation to getting out of that toxic environment. So the next year we grew by 300%. And then
Wow.
by year 3, I was hitting over $500,000 a year. And then year 7, we had around 100 people hit our first million ARR mark. And I was just blown away. No words, really, we did it. And it wasn't easy, but just like you said, it was a lot of head down, let's focus and let's just take every step as it comes and build the best solutions we possibly can for our customers. Just
Yeah.
showing up and being the best really worked in our favor. I was surprised how well it worked. Like in content writing back then, people didn't show up, they didn't deliver good content, they couldn't be relied on. So the fact that we had those 3 things down really set us apart. And I was surprised, just, being committed to excellence in customer standards, that alone really, really grew the business.
Yeah. No, and I love that. And you really figured it out along the way. Like, and I think the takeaway here is like you don't need to know how to do everything before you just do it. Right. Like you
Yes.
just throw your name in the ring and figure it out as you're battling through all the things that you're going through. So as you were growing and scaling and hiring and all those things, obviously many firsts, right? Like there are many first experiences for you. Like what lessons did you take from how you grew up into building this business and hiring people, and how much did you go and that learning process can be like, I learned not to do this, right? Like, so share
Yeah.
some of that, because I think what people miss a lot of the times is like every single thing we go through is a teaching point in some way, shape, or form to what we're going to do in the future.
Yeah, so true. I think that, something I did learn from the negative pressure of having to hire my poor mom was I learned early on something I've carried in even my books, talks, all of it, is that if you don't have the actual skill, you aren't qualified. And so I had a lot of candidates approach me where they had degree upon degree, certification, letters after the name, experience. And then when it came down to it, the actual skill of online content was completely missing. And so we couldn't hire them. And it was actually easier for me to get straight to that skill because I had seen it firsthand, losing a big client by having my mom write for that client. And just seeing that, okay, if the skill is not there, your whole business can crumble because of like that one person that is the weak link bringing it down. And so to this day, like even in the company I'm at now, Constant Scale, it's not my company, but I treat it the same way. Like if I see a weak link, I'm gonna point it out. Excuse me, hopefully I don't offend, but I know what that does to a company. So I think that lesson early on really helped me learn some critical things that, allow me to be successful in the next following years.
Yeah, you're now it gives me a good leeway. You're now the president of a company called Content at Scale. I'm sorry, Content at Scale. I said it right. .ai is the website. Talk about that transition, right? Like it's very rare that you find somebody who is a massively successful entrepreneur, has been able to build businesses, hire their own people, all the things, and then go into a company and work for an organization. It happens, but it's rare, right? So talk a little bit about that struggle and that shift. Did you exit from your company? Did you sell it? What did that whole kind of transition look like for you?
Yes. And I love that we're talking about this because just like you said, I don't see anyone talking about it. It's almost taboo. Like, wait, what? What? You're
It's like
giving up being
shame on
shame
you,
on,
right?
yeah, I had that the day I announced. I had one person. Oh, too bad. Hold on,
Oh,
whose life is it anyway? So I did have an exit in 2021. I sold my writing agency for several reasons. One, I mean, I've been doing it for a decade. I was really ready for something else. For another, I saw GPT-4 on the scene, and I knew that it was potentially capable of disrupting everything I did, which was human-only content production. And so here's this technology advancing at rapid speeds. And we're talking like it went from 117 million data points in 2020 to 174 billion just 24 months later. So
Ugh.
this thing's growing by billions of data points in a matter of months. Well, then, that's like the fastest acceleration I've ever seen in artificial intelligence in writing. So I was like, oh boy, this is going to disrupt. So I wanted to be in that next I want to be in that whole field instead of behind it or even just now coming on it. So decided to sell, which was great timing because in 2022, it allowed me to really build some new skills of coaching and consulting. And I found when coaching that I really love helping people grow. And I cultivated a skill set there that I don't think I will ever lose, that probably transformed my capabilities by 5x. So it gave me way more of an edge. But the journey to content scale happened when I'd been searching all of 2022. ChatGPT comes out in November. I'm studying all of these AI tools, talking to the founders, talk to Jasper's team, and I'm not seeing a real solution yet for what I do, which is high quality, research backed, authoritative, long form SEO content. So I'm not seeing it. And if I don't see it, I'm not going to adapt because I have to have a clear conscience here. If I'm going to recommend a software to you, it better be a good one, something that you can use. So at Content Hacker, I had people looking up to me saying, when is she going to adapt? The day she does, I will too. I literally heard that from people. And I was like, not today, not today. I'm sorry, even though ChatGPT is here. So in January of 2023, I was researching, and came across this video where Content at Scale was shown as one of these top 5 AI tools in a video by Adam Onfroy. And I remember pausing on that video, looking at that dashboard going, this is going to change the game. I see it. Like, it's writing the content I can write in 5 minutes. And it has everything it needs to go on your site and really position you as a leader. So I was like, okay, let's go all in. So I talked to the founder and I hear that he has an actual plan for the one missing ingredient, which is research backed. How do we make this stuff legit? How do we actually source our claims? How do we not just say the BS that ChatGPT tends to say? How do we say things that are actually based in truth? So the feature has now launched, I'm really proud to say, where this content is in fact pulling in links to high authority sites like .gov sites, health sites, if there is a claim stated that requires that level of authority citation. So that is now in the actual tool. It automatically finds these links for you, puts them in these pieces of content. Like all of these little pieces of what this tool now does in minutes used to take hours upon hours. So I built them a marketing plan because I saw the potential of where they could go. And then I met with the founder, who's also named Justin, and accepted a role as VP, just like barely slept on it because I knew this is really what it came down to. Like, I knew Content at Scale was the one that was going to change everything I did as a human delivery, as a humanly done service. So if this thing existed, well, then I better just join it. Like, that was my thought process. And what's interesting, coming from a cult, the one thing I was able to really refine was gut instinct. And I've never lost that. I really follow my gut instinct more quickly, I think, than the average person does. And I can say, like, that has always served me so well, positioned me way ahead, helped me make way more money. So like that one thing, when I saw the technology, there it is. Okay, I better join it. And I'm thrilled because after taking the VP role, the founder gave me a lot of freedom where I could come in and do work exactly how I wanted to do it with a lot of freedom and autonomy. So now I'm the president 3 months later after joining the company, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so it's so interesting because obviously AI burst on the scene, like you said, November of 2022. It feels like way longer than that. Like that's only 5 months. Like
Yeah.
obviously it's been around longer than that, but it took the main stage November of 2022. And I remember reading about it and watching a lot of people that I pay attention to in the thought leader space, them going, look, this is exciting. This is something to get excited about. But now there's this whole other spectrum of like, be afraid of it. Be afraid of AI. It's going to take your job. It's going to do this. Now, I was never afraid of AI taking my job. I'm in the human business. Like, it's easy for me to just go like, that's just the reality. But I was like, hey, this is a tool for me to move my business forward, to move the things that I'm weak at, into a better direction, all of those things. Right. So talk a little bit about that. Like, talk a little bit to the fears of people that they have with AI and how they shouldn't be afraid if they approach it the right way.
Yes. Yes. I think that fear is really a product of thinking inside the box. So if you're willing to think outside the box, then you're willing to step outside your fear. And, you hear it said all the time, but it's really the truth. The best things happen outside your comfort zone. So for me, taking this step was not at all in my comfort zone. But again, from experience, I've learned that's where the best results tend to come from for me. So I wasn't afraid of that. And I think that's the barrier for a lot of people, especially freelancers, writers, people that have done content as a service. I was just talking to the founder of a community around that the other day. And I really think she wanted to invite me in to be a punching bag because she didn't reply after I laid out my whole plan. But, like what I see is like, I'm really here for the people that are not afraid to be innovative. And for those people, like I am a voice, an advocate through Content at Scale, which is such a great place for me to be because I started as a freelance writer. I know what it's like to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and create content for a living. And I really resonate with that group of people. Yes, there will be a lot of writing jobs completely disrupted because of AI. And by disrupted, let's get clear, I mean gone. But those were the jobs that you weren't good at anyway. Like, if you just threw an email together and it didn't have a sense of style, personality, human touch, you didn't know your analytics, you didn't know how to write a good email. Well, yeah, ChatGPT absolutely can replace you. There's no doubt. But if you know how to get results for your clients, if you've done it, if you've built expertise, if you've studied, like if you've made it an art and a science, what you do, ChatGPT will not replace you. In fact, it will be your best weapon because it can make you 5 to 10 times faster. At Content at Scale, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing our users deliver content as a service, the long form content that I did for 10 years. And they're reducing costs by sometimes 10 to 25x, which is insane. Yeah. And they're reducing time by that too, like 11 plus hours per post. We surveyed our audience, found that out. And so what that means is they get a lot more freedom in their business. Time frees up, profit margin increases. You get to go travel. You get to be off at 3 with your family. Like that is beautiful. So the adaption, I think what can happen through adapting is nothing but good things for your business. And it's the people that didn't really care about what they were doing anyway, and they didn't care about their clients, and they just showed up for a mediocre paycheck. Yeah, those are the people in trouble. But, this goes back to when cars took over or when the internet took over the yellow book. It's the same, same phenomenon. So instead of fearing it because it looks big and scary, just think of it like a better way to adapt to a better future where you can work, with a lot more time freedom.
Yeah. And, we talked a little bit about this before I hit record. We talked about how like people are going to utilize AI, and especially in the sense that you do at your company, right, to make themselves look really good up front. And then very quickly people will find like, hey, I just hired somebody who's completely fake because it was AI that created all the content that made me want to get into their space. What can people look for to kind of weed those people out, if anything, right now, or is it too new to even tell?
Yeah, great question. I think It is a little more difficult, right? Because let's say you're hiring a writer. Well, you don't know if half their samples written by ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So I think the best way to assess for skills is to really put your candidate on the spot, meaning, hey, here's the kind of task that I would have you do in the role. Can you do like 30 minutes worth of it and show me how you would do it? Make a Loom video. Show me your thought process, walking me through, let's say you're writing an email. How would you set up this email for success? What would you track? You can't fake what you're going to say on the spot in a video. You're also not going to fake, real-time consultation. So if you can create that environment instead of looking at a resume, looking at samples, relying on what somebody else said about them, like that's the best way, I think, to quickly find out, okay, this person really knows their stuff. They wrote me this incredible analysis of how I can make my business better. Or, oh, this person took 3 days and it looks like ChatGPT wrote it.
Right. Yeah. And there's a great skill in waiting. If you're really good at your job and you do it really quickly, just wait a little bit before you deliver. Like it makes you look way better. Here's a little life hack for some entrepreneurs out there. But I love what you're doing in the space. I love what you're creating, but I also love the success you've been able to create in your life time and time again. So I want to ask you a question that I ask every single person on the show. It's a 2-part question. So the first part is, what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Love that. Well, if I can define a little bit, I want to tell you, like, my definition of success 100% used to be money. 100%. It was the race to that million per year, the race to the 250K per month. And I did all that. And what I can tell you is, in the end, and you hear it said, you see it in the Bible, you see it everywhere, but really it's true. No matter what you believe, I think this is true. In the end, money is just a tool. It's just a thing. It's not a goal. And it's not something that will bring you happiness. If anything, hitting a million per year brought me more stress, less happiness. So learning that, my definition of success today is the ability to do what I love without restrictions and have the freedom to still be at home or traveling with my family. Like, that is my definition of success. And that doesn't take boatloads of money, and then to be able to do that today, every day, I have a routine that I started doing about 3 years ago that changed my life. So in the morning, I used to be 100% work driven. Let's get up, let's race to the computer, let's get started, because I had a lot to do. And I thought, even more importantly, I thought incorrectly that was going to build my success. That was going to be a good day if I started working as early as possible. So 3 years ago, I just ditched that. It wasn't working. And I decided to start my day slow, get up with the sun, not get up at 5 a.m., start just reading and meditating and doing yoga and not watching the clock. And I'll tell you, when I started doing that, I started making better decisions throughout the day. I started getting more done in my day. I was somehow more creative at work. And I started really enjoying my day more, seeking a vacation less. Like, I made my daily life almost my vacation. So that, like, I still uphold that to this day. I don't have an alarm clock. I don't, and that goes against the grain. Like, you're supposed to wake up at 5 a.m. You're supposed to get to the desk by 5:30. No, like, you really don't have to start your day with that kind of punishment. You can start it slow. And I think, especially if your work is creative, actually have a better day.
Yeah, I love it. And honestly, if we didn't have to get kids on the bus and to school in our household, we would not wake up with an alarm, and the day would be more fruitful. I am not like, so it's funny. We wake up rather early in our house just because we want to drink coffee before the kids start stirring, right? Like, that's a good goal. Our whole thing. But I am not the person to be like, oh, let's battle to see who wakes up the earliest. And people who listen to the show, I talk about it all the time. Like, I have 4 non-negotiables, right? And these were all based off of things that I've learned from individuals. I do them every single day without other than certain travel days, I don't get it all in. But I have these 4 things, and it used to be like, let me knock them all out before I start my day, because the whole miracle morning, Hal Elrod type of thought process. And then I realized, like, it was actually working against the grain for me. Right. I was like, this isn't helping me. It's doing the exact opposite. So I love your flow. I love just waking up as your body wakes you up. By the way, you wake up so much more alert when you do that as well. Like it's a beautiful,
Mhm.
beautiful thing. So I love that. So thank you so much for sharing that. So I want to wrap up the interview with the same question that I finish every single interview with. But before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they start using your organization's website? What's all the good stuff?
Yeah. So, something I've been saying a lot is I write a weekly newsletter and it's quickly become like one of the best things I do in the week. And I get nothing but amazing feedback. So hopefully it's making a difference too. So to get to that newsletter, it's called the Weekly Casual standing for the initials of our company, Content at Scale. And it's a recap with my personal thoughts of what's happening in AI, what we see in the future, and it's our best content. So we're heavy on content production, creating amazing content through our channels, through education. So to get to that newsletter, go to contentatscale.ai/blog. You'll see a button, get free weekly insights from Julia. Click on that, fill that out. You'll hear from me every Friday. And, we get asked, is that a robot? No, it's not. It's me. We're not there yet.
I love it. Close soon. 6 months from now, it won't be her, but get it now while it's hot and it's her typing away, right? So that's good stuff. So, like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is: in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Hmm. Can I repeat
Of course,
what
yeah.
I said earlier? Okay, good. I have to say, and I love that you went into the story of my background because we can talk about this without shocking the audience. The moment I escaped the cult, like that was the catalyst. And in that moment, it's funny because I didn't think I was growing. I thought I was walking into this scary unknown where I was going to be some very broken, mediocre, non-impressive person. And what's happened in my life has almost been the complete opposite of what I thought. So, growth might not be what you think it looks like. And that step you take in a lot of fear, like I did, could actually be the biggest catalyst to growth.
I love it. Julia, I just want to let you know first, you are a very impressive person. So it's the exact opposite
Just
of what you thought. I love that you share your story so openly. You
mm,
continue to help so many individuals and entrepreneurs around the world. Thank you so much for what you do. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
thank you. Appreciate those words.